Manager punched the black husband of the billionaire in public. Then he begged for. It happened in broad daylight, in front of a crowd that could hardly believe their eyes. A manager, swollen with arrogance, threw a punch at a black man. The man staggered back, his dignity shaken, as whispers spread like wildfire. But this was no ordinary man. He was the husband of one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. And in that single moment, the manager had written his own downfall. What began as an act of humiliation would soon turn into a story of regret, power, and an apology that came far too late. The story begins on a warm afternoon in the city center. A luxury event was taking place, a grand opening for a new international hotel. Cameras flashed, journalists lined the sidewalks, and wealthy guests stepped out of limousines dressed in their finest. Among them was Daniel, the quiet, humble husband of billionaire entrepreneur Victoria Hayes. Daniel was not flashy. He didn't crave the spotlight or need expensive suits to prove his worth. He was tall, strong, and dignified, the kind of man who carried himself with calm confidence. Many didn't even know he was Victoria's husband, because he often stayed out of the media's eye, preferring to live a life of simplicity and respect. But on this day, fate would place him in the center of chaos. As the event went on, crowds filled the entrance hall. Security guards tried to keep order, but tensions rose when the hotel's manager, a man named Richard, stormed toward Daniel. Richard had always been known for his arrogance. He believed money and skin color defined worth. To him, Daniel looked like someone who didn't belong among billionaires and elites. Richard sneered, his voice cutting through the chatter. People nearby turned to see what was happening. Without warning, Richard shoved Daniel, muttering something cruel. Then, in an instant that silenced the entire hall, Richard raised his fist and punched Daniel square in the face. Gasps echoed. Phones lifted to record. Nobody could believe what had just happened. Daniel stumbled back, but didn't raise his fists. His hand touched his cheek where the blow had landed, and his calm eyes lifted to meet Richard's. Around them, the air was heavy with tension. Guests whispered, shocked at the violence. Some looked away, too afraid to intervene. Others raised their phones higher, capturing every second. Richard puffed his chest with pride, as if he had proven something. He turned to the crowd, almost expecting applause for putting Daniel in his place. But what he failed to notice was how quickly the whispers around him were changing. "He just hit him!" someone muttered. "Doesn't he know who that is?" Another whispered. Within moments, the truth spread through the hall. This wasn't just any man. Richard had assaulted. This was the husband of Victoria Hayes, the billionaire who had funded the very hotel Richard managed. Every camera, every phone, every pair of eyes now turned not on Daniel's supposed humiliation, but on Richard's colossal mistake. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stood there dignified, while Richard's arrogance slowly drained from his face. The crowd's energy shifted. What had looked like strength in Richard moments ago now looked like cruelty. And then, the worst part for Richard, Victoria herself appeared at the top of the staircase. Dressed in elegance, her sharp eyes locked on the scene below. Her security team flanked her, but she didn't need them to silence the room. The weight of her presence alone froze Richard in place. The cameras snapped wildly. The world had just witnessed a manager assault the husband of the very woman who owned the empire he worked for. And worse, he had done it in public. Richard's face paled. His pride melted into panic. He suddenly realized that one reckless act of hate might cost him everything. Victoria descended the stairs slowly, her heels clicking against the marble, echoing like a judge's gavel in a courtroom. All eyes were on her. Richard swallowed hard, his body trembling, sweat beading on his forehead. He tried to speak, but his words stumbled out as mumbles. The confidence he had moments ago was gone, replaced by desperation. He dropped his arrogant posture and stepped toward Daniel, his voice cracking. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know." The crowd booed. Cameras zoomed in. The man who had puffed himself up just minutes ago was now reduced to begging in front of the very person he tried to disgrace. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't move closer or step back. He simply stood tall, his silence louder than any words. Richard fell to his knees, his hands clasped in a pathetic attempt to show remorse. "Please forgive me," he stammered. "I didn't mean—" But it was too late. The damage was done. Victoria's voice cut through the air, calm but icy. "You don't belong in my company." Security guards stepped forward. Cameras captured every second as Richard was escorted out of the building, his pleas ignored. The once proud manager who thought he could humiliate another human being because of his skin color was now the one disgraced, ruined in the very place he thought he controlled. The story didn't end with Richard being dragged away. It was only the beginning of the conversation that would follow. By the next morning, headlines across the nation told the story. Hotel manager assaults billionaire's black husband, fired immediately. The footage spread online within hours. Millions watched as Richard's arrogance turned into public shame. Comment sections filled with outrage, support for Daniel, and praise for Victoria's swift response. What Richard had intended as humiliation became a lesson broadcast to the world. Daniel, however, never gloated. He didn't seek revenge or throw back the same hate he had received. His silence, his dignity, and his calm strength had been the loudest message of all. By refusing to react with violence, he showed a kind of power that Richard could never understand. For many watching, the story was more than just about one man losing his job. It was a mirror, reflecting how deeply prejudice still lingers in society, even in places of wealth and power. It forced people to ask themselves, how many Richards still exist, hidden behind titles, waiting to reveal their hatred when they think no one important is watching? Victoria and Daniel walked away from the incident together, heads held high, proving that no punch, no act of hate could define their worth. Instead, it only exposed the weakness of those who believed in it. And so the story ends not with the downfall of Richard, but with a reminder to everyone who saw it. Hate may strike loudly, but dignity, truth, and justice will always speak louder in the end. Because in the end, what matters is not the fist that was raised, but the man who stood strong,